I'm not going to wear a different outfit every session. I've got enough in my bag to do that, but I'm not going to do it. I was just a bit chilly, so I've changed. Noticeable queue for the toilets. I think it's because we're like a 95% female audience here. There was a commandeering of the gents, so, you know, up to you. Go for it. Next session, we're going to go right through to lunch now. Thank you everybody for getting back on time, which gives me an opportunity to say, can all the speakers keep on time, because we've got a lot to get through in the next session. We're going to start with a session on wildcards. Oh, is there anything you wanted to add? No? Okay. So can we have the legal practice sounding Armstrong, Daniels and Madison Warren up for the next session? And James, if you want to come down. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Hi, so my name is James Armstrong. I've been working for NATO in Afghanistan for about 10 years. I should say before I start that my comments do not reflect NATO policy on Amber. So I want to take you into a dystopian vision of the future, Britain in 2026, a bitter insurgency across the country. US forces as part of an international coalition have been deployed across the country, and in a forward operating base Borsetshire and Regional Command Felpersham, the 82nd Airborne Division have received reports of insurgent activity in a small settlement called Ambridge, which is about 6 miles to the south. You can see on the map that there's been a number of ID strikes around Ambridge, and there are reports of guerrilla fighters based up there in the Hassett Hills. So how likely is this scenario? Well, it's feasible. So in the event of an insurgency in the UK, there's actually a fair chance that Ambridge would be the site of significant insurgent activity. Insurgencies over history have been predominantly rural based. As Mao Zedong articulated, you need to revolutionise the peasant proletariat. We've seen rural insurgencies across the world, Afghanistan being the latest one. And there are a number of key factors in Ambridge that make it actually a benign environment for an insurgent movement. You've got the rugged terrain, in the Hassett Hills, which could provide a sanctuary for insurgents. You've got a fairly weak and there's a very weak infrastructure as well, which means that the government can't really establish a long-term presence there. It's also, if you look at the map down here, Borsetshire itself is a potential staging area for high-profile attacks in major cities such as London, Oxford and Birmingham. So the US Counterinsurgency Manual 2014 identifies 5 root causes of insurgency. I think we can, in terms of Ambridge, I think we can dismiss the first 3, religion, nationalism and ethnicity. There are no indications that that is the case in Ambridge. But I think in the final 2, I think there's more grounds for suggesting that those might be causes of insurgent activity in Ambridge. You've got significant economic wealth differentials, the Aldridges versus the Carters. You've got inequalities in land ownership and limited employment prospects. You've also got indications of corruption. We've seen Borsetshire land interference in local government. So who would our insurgents be? Well, I spent a happy afternoon in Kabul trying to identify potential characters. So the US counterinsurgency doctrine identifies 4 main groups of insurgents, 4 main groups within an insurgent network. First of all, the leadership. There's a fair chance that this wouldn't be based in Ambridge. It's likely to be based outside Ambridge, potentially in a much more isolated location, impervious to drone strikes. But you would have, I think there's a fair chance that you would have a number of potential guerrilla fighters in Ambridge. The profile of these tends to be young men with poor employment prospects, Jazza McCurry, Jamie Perks, Ed Grundy. But I think as well, it didn't occur to me while I was writing this, but I think there's a fair chance that Emma could be a particularly successful guerrilla fighter. Supporting the guerrillas, you have an auxiliary network, which tends to be made up of disenfranchised clan or tribal networks, the Carters and the Horrobins potentially providing auxiliary support. You also tend to find an underground network, a close nexus between an insurgent network and underground illegal activity. So potentially the Grundy network, their criminal activities could be financing insurgents in Ambridge. So historically, the solution to insurgencies tend to be very security focused. So in the past, the population of Ambridge would probably be relocated to a secure village in order to monitor their activities. But this, particularly with Vietnam, this doctrine was discredited, and a more comprehensive approach was formulated, which is based around four main lines of effort. So first of all, you have shape, where you're looking at trying to shape the environment through psychological operations, through engaging potential human intelligence sources. Then you have the clear phase, which is the more traditional security-focused phase, where you're trying to eliminate or reintegrate potential guerrilla fighters. Ed Grundy would probably be droned at some point. Then finally, once you've cleared the area, you would have the hold phase, and the international forces would withdraw, and the host nation forces would establish a presence in the area. So potentially Lieutenant Hebden Lloyd and B.C. Harrison Burns would be mobilised to secure the local population. And finally, the build phase, this is where we address the root causes. So potentially you could have the government diversifying village council representation to enfranchise disaffected guerrilla fighters, and land reform, potentially the breakup of Borsetshire land. But throughout this, but our US counterinsurgency doctrine emphasising throughout the need for a population-centric approach, particularly understanding the informal systems of political influence. And this word informal is key, because in Afghanistan, what I've seen tend to happen is people focus on the formal power brokers. So in the case of Ambridge, they'd be engaging people like Brian, Neil, Alan, and they'd also be engaging the formal communications network. And unfortunately, in Afghanistan, I think in Ambridge, this would do nothing to address the root causes. Particularly engaging someone like Brian, whose activities in Borsetshire land potentially represent a root cause of the insurgency. And I would recommend US forces in Ambridge looking at the work of Nicola Headlam and her work on engaging informal power brokers such as Peggy and Neil, and informal communication networks.
And Ed Grundy, King of Ambridge!
So what was the point of all this? Well, I think there are potentially lessons that could be learned from Ambridge and could be applied to counterinsurgency training in the future. The photo below is from a simulated Afghan village in Norfolk. It wasn't very effective as a training simulation, and the problem was it prioritised the physical aspects of village life without necessarily engaging without necessarily providing training on informal networks and the need to engage the local population and understand them using potentially the informal networking techniques developed by Nicola Headlam. So that's it. Thank you.
Amazing. That was so good. When that first came in, I loved that picture of Peggy going off to the camp. It was just brilliant. We'll do the same. We'll take groups of questions at the end of this session.
Because there's so much in common.
Follow that. Well, you might think that there's no connection between James's talk and ours, but we were sat at the back thinking, come on, in a full legs good, 2 legs bad situation, Hilda Ogden is definitely going to be leading the animal life. Well, thank you very much. We're delighted back for what is our second academic archers conference. Hooray. Delighted, Nate, amazed to be let back in the building. Last year, you might remember, we banged on about unfeasibly large parsnips and pet show and produce shows. This year, we're sticking with peas, and we're going to be talking about pets. Now, there are 2 main reasons why we chose this topic. Firstly, as you're probably all aware, the Archers was originally produced in order to disseminate information to farmers and smallholders after the war. So really, animals are an essential reason why the Archers exist in the first place. Secondly, animals are often used as significant dramatic devices within the Archers. If you think of the key
pivotal memory that everybody has of the Archies. It's of Grace Archer dying in the fire. Why did she die in the fire? She was trying to rescue her horses, exactly. And also, on top of those two reasons, we're actually pet owners ourselves. But I have to say, Annie's bugging. But I have to say that Annie's more successful in this than I am, because some of yours are actually still alive. Whereas over the last few years, I've come to think of myself as the Fred West. Because all of mine are now sadly buried in the backyard. And on that horrifying we'll move swiftly on.
So we set ourselves some research questions that we were interested in answering. And we got particularly intrigued about the idea of metaphors. So as it says here, using a term that may not normally be applied to something to describe it and enable greater understanding. So, for example, it's raining cats and dogs. Okay. So we're interested in what metaphors do people use to describe their relationship with pets. And Paula mentioned earlier that issue about private voices giving insights. Also, how do these metaphors translate to the Archers, and how does that help us to understand and empathise with the characters? Just a little bit about the literature and what it says. So the first thing is a lot of literature to say pets are good for people. They provide companionship, they de-stress us, they lower our blood pressure, they provide us with activity, they help with disabled support. And people love their pets. They'll tolerate any mischief and mayhem. They may even encourage it. They may boast about it. And I'm particularly proud of the way my dog Sprocket ambushes the Waitrose delivery. You know, the plug for Waitrose, because they love us. He gets into the packaging, he gets the ham, and without the aid of scissors, he manages to remove the ham. And this is the example of dog shaming. I ate all the ham, and I'm not sorry. So people see their pets as members of the family, and that means that when a pet dies, they may well mourn their pet in the same way as they would a member of the family. The particular article about metaphor was from Belk in 1996, and through interviews he identified 5 metaphors: pleasures, problems, parts of self, members of the family and toys. And we were interested to see if that stood up to scrutiny. So we started by looking at reality, then we moved it to the Archers.
So what do we do? We ran a survey, and as we've seen from the literature, people love talking about their pets, however they see them and how badly they see them. So we got 270 replies to our survey in just a few weeks, which were amazing. Probably the best Cranfield survey ever. best not broadcast that. Now, over on the left-hand side, these are all the categories that Annie and I faithfully put down as what constitutes pets. And over on the other side were all the kind of things that we forgot about that people added in as other sections. We're kind of hoping that the worms are pets in their own right and not a nasty surprise that came in one of the cats was gone. A lot of love for lizards there, ferrets, which is excellent. See, Joe Grundy would be very proud of that. And tortoises. There is only one tortoise in our survey, but he's very precious. He's called Arnold the tortoise. And I don't know if you can get a crush on tortoises, but I've kind of developed a bit of a crush for Arnold. So remember him, because he may well appear in some of the future slides.
He is Anne's tortoise.
No! I need to speak to you afterwards then. Because he is a legend, absolute legend. So what you can see is a very wide range of pets in people's households, and a lot of people have multiple pets. They just need to stick with one either. And what we think is that we've seen a wide range of pets in the Archers over the years. I don't know if anybody remembers Miss Babs, the Grundy's pig, or Eccles the peacock. I'm not sure whether we featured for very long.
Still there. Yeah.
Wow.
There was a lot of tweeting about, there was a woman who had an emotional support peacock turned away from a plane ride. So there was a lot on Twitter about Eccles is an emotional support peacock.
Excellent. That shows how closely I listen.
Did you get that time, please? Did you get that time for your
I don't really want to be scarred by a flapjack this morning. But we don't think there's a vast variety of animals in the Archers at the moment. So, the first thing we asked them was, do you talk to your pet? How do you relate to it? And if you do talk to it, how do you talk to it? Overwhelmingly, people do talk to their pets, unsurprisingly. 106 people I don't know if you can see this on the slide very easily. 106 people responded that they talked to them as if they're a child, and 36 people as if they're talking to them of their own age. 72 people as if they're talking to an animal. That kind of makes sense. That's what and some of them, it was a mixture of these, and for one person in particular, it's very contextual. I do talk to my pet like a child, but when he was pestering me for food, I explain to him like an adult. One of my favourite questions, does your pet have any special places or special furniture? Anything like my cats, it was cardboard boxes, newspapers, laptops, anything was fair game. And most people's pets have multiple places where they chose to nest. So these are just a few of the examples that people mentioned. But we've pulled out one or two of our favourites, and I think it probably relates to some of the more pampered pets in the survey. That's not the tallest. Now, God knows Annie and I don't like to judge people, but what is happening in this house? Now, obviously we have to ask the inevitable question, have you ever dressed your pet? And I was completely gutted when we got the response back that 188 people do not dress their pets. And the ones that they do, it's purely for the comfort of their animals. It's coats and jumpers in winter time. There were a few people that did experiment, however.
No.
Can you imagine getting cats into pyjamas? That's not Arnold, by the way. And the one person that only tried it once, and if you've owned a pet, you can imagine the face of contempt on this animal. There is a serious side to this question, because for us it very much demonstrates that people aren't seeing their pets as purely as a form of entertainment for themselves, and they're not dealing with them like toys. So hopefully this will bear out when we actually ask that question about metaphors later on. Now, we've added this slide because we need to confess that we're not the best at survey construction. And this is what happens when a survey question goes wrong. We ask them, is their pet able to go wherever it wants in the house? And if not, why not? And I believe it was one of my friends that answered this. And it's a fair point. With my reputation moving into my particular expertise in pet ownership, which is saying goodbye to animals, we had a lot of very emotional comments from people in the survey where they've been affected from the loss of their pet. And as we've seen in the literature, very much seen it like a loss of a member of the family. And this is the one quote that really summed it all up for us. The pet was such a huge part of their daily routine and how much that they contributed to the well-being of the family. I just wanted to show of hands in the audience how many people have actually been affected by the loss of a pet during their life. Not surprising, yes. So you know what that pain is like. So now we get on to really the core question of the survey. How would they describe their pet in terms of Bouts metaphors? So overwhelmingly positive. So 168 people said they saw their animal as a member of the family. 88 people saw it as a pleasure. 41 said part of me. And as you can see here, nobody classed their pet as a toy. And I think going back to the dressing situation, that's very telling. Now you might see that 4 people described their animals as a problem. And I just want to explain that actually this has nothing to do with inappropriate behaviour, either the owner or the pet. It was to do with the fact that the owners worried that they weren't perhaps looking after them in quite the right way, that they were leaving them too long. And in the case of the darling Arnold Tortoise's owner, and sorry, I'm going to embarrass you now. For Arnold the tortoise owner, there's a very real problem with his life expectancy, because normally a tortoise will live for about 50 to 100 years or even more. Not in my house, obviously. It's got 10 years max in my house. But they are genuinely worried that one day they will need to give him up if they had to move into sheltered accommodation. And now I'm going to read the quote that you left us, because I find it very moving. I should get you to read it. I bought Arnold with birthday money, 7 and